a week.
Oh, what a week. How has your week been, Mr. Sam Player?
Mr. Alasdair Gibbs, my week was good. It was definitely interesting post Doctor Who come down. Last week was an intense episode. Oh, not necessarily intense. It was just it was a full-on episode. So to be honest, a lot of I think both of our week was spent editing last week's episode.
Yes, it was a whole 2 hours, and then I came to post all the memes on our Instagram, which absolutely popped off this week, which was nice. And if nothing else, like last week, the finale was such good fuel for memes. Mm-hmm. Like they were just flowing out of my brain. I wasn't like trying to think of memes. They came to me as if they were visions.
In a vision.
They did well, because I think the more absurd the episode of Doctor Who, the better the memes are. And so do head over to @Wholala Pod anywhere and enjoy some of those.
Do, and you'll see a bomb trailer that Alasdair made. Like, I'm not gonna lie, you have been this whole season taking the lead on memes and socials, and the trailer that you made, I was like, that is top BBC standard, like filmmaking. That was so good.
Stop it. Keep going. No, you're so welcome. I just, sometimes with like an edit, you get an idea and I just get so in the zone. I think you'll probably get this with other creative things you do. You probably get this with sculpts where I have to
yes.
I have to finish it. Yeah. And so like I'll be like head down 3 hours, no interruptions. Like and I get excited as I go because I want to show someone the finished thing.
You like to replay, like you'll get a bit like what you've done and go back and watch it 3 times and then carry on.
Yeah, exactly. And I was getting all excited. Oh, I want to get this finished. Anyway, all to say, been a good week.
It's been a good week. Good.
Well, been a good week. Been a bit of a flat week as well. Been a bit of a like, he's already gone week.
I know. I'm still holding out hope for the timeline where we get a one-off Billy Piper special. Who knows? Maybe the 14th Doctor comes back too, and then she finds the real Doctor, and lo and behold, it's still Ncuti Gatwa, and nothing that we saw had happened. But I don't know. Holding out for a hero in that respect. Sure.
Yeah. You know, people thought that when he woke up on the grass in Belinda's garden, people thought he was returning to the point where reality started to break, which was with Mavity, and that he was going to wake up in Isaac Newton's garden and time was going to reset from that point or something. Didn't happen. Would have been interesting. Wouldn't have made any sense.
Would not have been the clean jumping on point for a Ncuti Gatwa season that we were promised.
No.
But then again, was this?
No. Also no.
Well, look, this week, as promised last week, we're going to dive into all of our thoughts on Season 2, 2025 of Doctor Who. I feel like, and I've said this a lot, it's easy and completely understandable to get bogged down about your thoughts as the season as a whole and the era as a whole based on the finale. And there is so much I adore about this season of Doctor Who, and I want to sort of like focus on that. But now that we have the retrospect of being able to see both seasons together as an era, there's a lot of thoughts. I got a lot to say.
I was trying to remember it's hard to remember what you thought of individual episodes.
Yeah.
It's really hard. And so I have to like think back to, what did I say at the time? I must have thought that when I said it. And then try and get back to that place. So yeah, I'm excited to go back through them.
Yeah, me too. And you know what? The listeners can just go back and listen to the back catalogue because we have got episodes on every single story we are going to touch on today. So go back and give that a listen if you want our true in-the-moment thought. Like, skip back to the Interstellar Song Contest and we'll be like, this was amazing. This era is fantastic. Best season ever. And then now we're like, ooh.
I'm feeling so sad inside.
I'm feeling a bit awful inside. I want someone to make a tally of every time we've used that as a quote.
One of the all-time funniest clips.
Exactly. Well, to recap you on the episodes we had this season, this series of Doctor Who started with Joy to the World on Christmas Day, 2024. And then we had The Robot Revolution, Lux, The Well, Lucky Day, The Story in the Engine, The Interstellar Song Contest, Wish World, and The Reality War.
It's been a series full of variety. I've loved all the places he's gone.
It's like a quality street.
We've gone from Nigeria to a space station to a singing contest to dystopian Pleasantville. It's been a ride.
Yeah, it really has. And there has been so much I adored. And I'm never, the listeners know this, I'm never someone to rank individual episodes, but I feel like if I did and then made an average for the season as a whole, I actually think this season would age really well and like mark up quite high on my list overall, because the majority of episodes in this season I loved, and I truly believe and I'll say this as a bold statement, I enjoyed this series as a whole more than I enjoyed season 1, which I think is a good marker for a TV show, that you continually grow your enjoyment.
Yeah, I think I agree.
I don't know.
Question mark. It's really hard to separate because, again, it's the ending of a 2-series story. And the last one is so messy story-wise that it's really hard to like judge it based on that. Almost, I just wish we could judge it based on the rumored original ending and then see, like, as intended, was it what it was?
Well, actually, semi-confirmed. So the actor that plays Captain Poppy's mum, they have an Instagram for Sian Phipps, who plays Poppy, and they basically were commenting and sharing content about like the original ending, which basically confirms what you said last week about like Susan watching the party holding Poppy with everyone dancing. So I am happy to believe, along with the Disney Plus Germany poster of them in what looked like a club celebrating May Day. I'm happy to believe that that was the truth. Obviously, nothing's been officially announced, and as we were so politely told by Ncuti, this was always the plan.
This was always the plan.
I believe that there was that other version that could have been better. But
Completely. Of course there was. Of course there was another ending. It's a shame because now that they've doubled down on, like, this was always the plan, that file that does exist, like, there is a rough cut or even quite a close to finished cut, like, depending on when they started the VFX, which could have been quite a long time ago, is in a vault somewhere. Like, it exists. Unless someone decides to leak it, which I don't think they will, it's never going to see the light of day. Like, there is a Carol Ann Ford edit. There is the good ending. It'll be like, I wonder if in like 10, 15 years, it'll be like, look, okay, yeah, true. Like, now everyone knows what happened behind the scenes. We can finally reveal what the original ending was. And one day it will come out in like a retrospective. The show's been cancelled. It doesn't matter anymore. Like, we'll show you.
I don't know. There's a timeline that we all have to act towards, dear listeners, where, you know, Billie Piper gets her amazing solo adventure to show what an incredible doctor she'd be. But then something happens where she retro-regenerates at the end and goes back to 15. She wasn't really the 16th Doctor. She was an interim one. And then in this, they change reality somehow. They degenerate back into Ncuti, and then we slip into this real timeline, and then that footage gets used in the episode, and then they can say it really was the plan all along because Ncuti continues his story. So let's will that into existence, everyone.
This could all, let's cope together, everyone. This could all still be part of the plan. Remember we said, like, oh, they could be being clever. You know, it was like, you know, Mrs. Flood is like, yes, that's right. Show ends 25th of May or whatever it was.
Oh my God.
And we all thought it ended. And then they're like, here we go. Surprise episode. It's coming next Saturday. Trust me.
Oh, it's coming. It's coming. Well, you know that clip of the Taylor Swift concert where she's like, do you think she's going to come back out? I think she's going to come back out. And that's me with Ncuti. Me on iPlayer, exactly. Well, we've kind of broken our thoughts into a few little subsections. We're not going to hang around too much on any one of them just because there's a lot to cover. I think the most obvious place to start is our thoughts this season on Ncuti Gatwa's 15th Doctor.
Oh, I think his performance has been wonderful. I've really bought his Doctor. I've loved his Doctor. I think Joy to the World is where I really felt he settled into the role. Mm-hmm. And I've loved watching him. It felt like he had so much more to give. I felt like he was ready to tackle a much more challenging script as well and show off some more dimensions of the Doctor that we maybe didn't get to see. How this Doctor was written, I maybe feel was a little bit lacking. And I think maybe there wasn't as much complexity to this Doctor as I would have liked.
I completely agree with that. I think that, like, I loved his performances. For me, I think that some of the most interesting stuff he did was this season when we get to see the darker Doctor, like in the Robot Revolution and Lux, where he's almost trying to manipulate Belinda in a way that she has to snap out and be like, I'm not one of your adventures, I'm not playing with you. And he looks at her with that look of like frustration that she's not falling for it. And I think that's some of the most interesting Ncuti stuff we've had. And I love his performances, but my biggest gripe, like you said about how sad we are that he's leaving, is that I don't think that we've really scratched the surface of what he can do. Like, I think that he's so talented and he has so much charisma, but now that we've seen what is that Doctor's entire body of work, I feel left wanting more because I know that he has more to do and to give. Yeah,
I get that. I totally get that. Yeah, I'd like to see more. For comparison, because it's the latest thing I've watched, right? I watched Into the Dalek last night for fun Peter Capaldi series 8, episode 2.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that Capaldi is the Doctor that I previously had really slated this. And I was like, no, that Doctor's too dark. Like, I was like, he's too cold when he says like, oh, this is Clara. She's my carer. She cares, so I don't have to. And I was like, I hate that line. I hate that line. The Doctor should always care. Actually, like off the back of this era, it's quite refreshing to watch. Like, it's quite fun. And that Doctor is much more deliberately, because it was, written to really explore this through that season, morally grey. Or at least there was like, he would do things that seemed unkind, but actually were rational. So like they're inside the Dalek at one point, and one of the people in their crew has like shot the Dalek from the inside and injured it, and these Dalek antibodies are coming to kill it. And the Doctor in this moment is like, quick, eat this. And he swallows this pill thinking it's going to save him, and then he dies anyway. And then the crew gets angry at him, and they're like, I thought you were going to save him. And he's like, no, he was already dead. Like, but I now have a scan of the radiation signature I needed, so the rest of us are safe. And it was like cold and callous, but like made sense, and it was calculated, and his priority is always on like saving other people and saving Clara. And it was, and then they get into a later point in the story where they all fall down a chute, and they all land in this like human soup of protein, and someone's like, oh my God, is Gareth in here? And he's like, yes, somewhere on the top surface if you want to say a few words. And he's like, he's so cold. And I think there's something about like that Dark Doctor that's fun to explore, where like the veneer is gone, where he's not pretending that he's not always doing these calculations, where he's putting on the charm. And I think that's what I thought we were going to maybe get a bit more of, was like the charm slips. But instead what we got was kind of like Juno saying like, oh yeah, Interstellar Song Contest, I wanted the Doctor to go too far, and then Russell was pushing me to make him go further, so he electrocutes this guy on the floor, and it's really scary, and you'd wonder if he's going to kill him or not. And that was kind of, I think that's the only memorable Dark Doctor I got in this season.
Yeah, and the bit where, in the same episode where he's shouting me like, you have put ice in my heart. Da, 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 da.
What ice? What did that cause? Where did that go?
Where's that going? I don't know.
At the end, he's like, it's been an absolute pleasure. And then dies.
Ncuti's Doctor and Capaldi's Doctor would deal with the trolley problem very differently. Ncuti's like, we can't trade a life for a life. And Capaldi's like, kill that one.
Kill that one. It's fine. This is kind of the thing. Well, this is it. Capaldi would swap 1 billion lives for Clara, so it's fine.
Yeah, literally.
No, I don't know. It's interesting. Like, I think this is how I've started to feel about it, is that like he's kind of always trying to do the right thing, and he doesn't slip very much.
Yeah.
Like, he's so well-intentioned, this Doctor, and I think they always try to put the 15th Doctor in a good light.
Yeah.
Most of the time. And maybe that's why like the ending of Interstellar Song Contest felt so weird, was that like suddenly he freaks out.
Yeah.
But I'm sure someone could contradict that and point out like actually his 3 instances of times that he wasn't. But do you know what I mean? I feel like fundamentally, like, I think Russell T Davies wants to write a hero.
Yeah.
And I think when Moffat did it in Capaldi's era, he came to that conclusion in this whole like, am I a good man arc of like, I'm not a hero, I'm a passerby. That's critical. Like, I'm just a guy. Yeah. And that the Chibnall carried that through as well. She was like, I'm just a traveler. I'm just passing through. I help where I can. That's all I can do.
No, exactly. I do like the intentions that Russell brought to this Doctor. I think that making him the first full-time black actor to play the Doctor, the first openly queer actor to play the Doctor, both of those were very deliberate choices in his cast, but also how he's written. I really love how we have Ncuti's heritage brought to the Doctor, like in the Sonic and in stories like Story in the Engine. I think it's really special. Obviously, we've spoken about it on the pod before, and it's not in this season, but to have, the first gay male romance with the Doctor.
Yeah.
Obviously, we had Jodie and Mandip performing in a sapphic romance, but to have like Rogue, and I am glad they touched on it, but then again, it just makes me really sad because it's so clear that was meant to be wrapped up in the next season. I think in the next season, we would have had Susan, Rogue, and Daleks. That's what I think season 3 would have been, and that's the season of Doctor Who I really want.
Yeah, me too. But then I think with all these unfinished storylines, and there are a few of them, I kind of think, why did we get commissioned 2 series and write a 3-arc season? Like, that feels so risky.
That's so risky.
Reflection.
I know, and like, it's important to like tease things to make people want the next season, but like, I feel like in his first era, every season was written as a 1-series arc. And then at the end of series 4, we had like cumulative threads that we like wove together. But by the end of every series of, 1 through 4, and then it does carry on into like, Matt and Capaldi and that, but it feels like by the end of the season, we've tied up all the loose ends, but there are a few like hints to things that you could come back to. So like the picking up of the Master's ring is clearly like we might come back to this. But that's like, it's tacked on the end. It doesn't stop you from enjoying the full season being closed.
Yeah, same with the boss, right? Like that. Yeah. That doesn't mean anything. It's just dangling a little something. You know what it gives? You know, like writing in like, Rogue and Susan and the rest of it. It kind of gives Sutek's approach, right? Was that he couldn't kill Ruby because the story was so tantalizing that he had to know the ending. I feel in the same way, Russell has written there a metaphor for Doctor Who. He felt that Disney wouldn't be able to kill it because he'd written a story that was so tantalizing they'd need to know the next part. And then Disney said, bet.
Girl, Bob Iger does not care.
No, but they've been awful quiet about their renewal that was meant to be coming at the end of the airing of the season.
To transition slightly from the Doctor, I would like to touch on the companions. I think obviously starting with Varada's Belinda Chandra.
Yes.
Also, got to say this, I don't know if I've already mentioned it on the pod. Interesting they reused the surname Chandra. I don't think I've said it. I'm just saying it's interesting.
Yeah, why not? That's a coincidence.
That's a coincidence. With Belinda, I think she started out so strong. By the end of Lux, like, was so confident. I was like, she's overtaken Ruby for me. Like, I haven't taken to a companion this quickly since arguably like Amy, maybe, where she's so strong, she's so opposing to the Doctor. It gives that conflict that we were like begging for with him and Ruby. And by the end of the series, looking at her full arc, and it is a factor to these like quite obvious rewrites, I just feel like her character turned into like a sloppy mess where it took everything that we loved about her and then kind of like flipped it by literally turning into like this doting mother instead of like the partying companion we were meant to have, and making her this very quiet, you know, nice happy house, nice happy mum, I've got to get back for my daughter this whole time, rather than just like, I don't want to become one of your adventures. And I think that, you know, we mentioned it last week, but like an unforgivable crime of this is that they turned her into exactly what she asked not to. Like, her free will was completely taken away. And because Conrad's wish made her think she was a mother in this world where he wants everyone to be good, happy girl, good, happy wife, good, happy mother, she convinced herself she was a mother. And then the Doctor wanted to do everything he could to keep their child alive and make sure she was a mother. And it turned her into that adventure that the Doctor promised her he wouldn't. And I just think that was a real disservice to her character.
It only works if you position that as the tragic ending. People said this as well about Amy and Rory. They were like kind of saying that Moffat, when he talked about them like returning to their domestic life and giving up traveling, that was kind of their tragic end. Like that they had to give it all up for something so dull. And I think like they kind of twisted it into like, but that's the one adventure I can never have, you know, is right here in this living room, more interested in anything I'll see in space. Or like, not true, but you know, like, you know, this is your adventure right here, having a baby. That's wonderful. That's better than any supernova. I don't know if I buy all that. I agree. Like, it's weird. We had one character sold to us in the Robot Revolution and Lux, but particularly the Robot Revolution, who was going to be bringing this conflict to the dynamic, who was like, I'm not one of your adventures. I don't want to be with you in the TARDIS. I want to get back home. I'm hostage in this situation. You are dangerous. You're a manipulator. I've had experience with guys like you. See Alan, who we just met, who you're not so dissimilar to, actually. And that makes me uncomfortable. And, you know, from there, we would have had this really interesting dynamic throughout the season that maybe she warms up a little bit, but actually maybe they hit a few bumps where she dislikes me even more.
Interstellar could have been it.
And there's a real breaking of trust, and maybe at the end they part ways because she really did not enjoy being with him.
I mean, in classic, like Tegan at the end of an adventure, I think it was a Dalek story, she basically was like, I can't continue on this life with you. Like, I'm terrified for my life every time I leave this box. Like, I don't want to be with you anymore. And she just like ups and leaves at the end of the episode. And I feel like it could have been a very interesting ending for Belinda, like a companion that doesn't like the Doctor by the end. But no, didn't get that.
Because yes, there's been like a Martha walks away.
Yeah.
But not out of a dislike of the Doctor.
She loves him. She still loves him.
Yeah, more almost because I love you, I need to walk away type thing.
Yeah,
right?
She's like, if I don't leave you, I never will kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. I did actually have a broader thought. I started scribbling this down about the role of the companions more broadly. We kind of lost Belinda by the end of the Interstellar Song Contest. Wishworld, she's, I don't think, really in it. I think Varada's almost playing someone else completely who never really regains her memories. The Reality War, Ruby becomes central now and has a role in taking down Comrade. And again, I guess like in Wishworld, like Ruby has, well, she's meant to have a role in like helping the disabled community take down Comrade, but none of them actually ever get to initiate that plan, whatever that plan was going to be. And then again, like in the reality world, Belinda is, I think, really quite passive to events. She's like put in a box. She's put in a box, and beyond that, she just events happen to her. Like she gains the child, she loses the child, she remembers the child. Like things just happen to Belinda, I think, in the last episode.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I feel like, again, to sort of touch on, so I was going to segue into Ruby, but you segued so beautifully to it yourself. I think, again, similar to Ncuti, it's kind of like wasted potential, where like, I personally didn't love Lucky Day, but I did really enjoy Millie's performance in it. And I think there's a really interesting story there about PTSD with companions, that when they leave the doctor, like, they feel anxious, they can't sleep, they can't get it out their head, they can't move on, you know, she's still going back to unit. And like the episode ends there being like, I really think I need to like remove myself from this. I need something. But it's a shame that like nothing comes of that, like in the season. But also we already kind of had that with the companion support group. And I do think it was almost not necessarily better, but shown in a really interesting light in Lucky Day, where like if you had just had a scene, I don't know, I would have liked the episode to maybe open with her at a companion support group. And then the story continues as it does. I don't know. It just feels sad that we got that already. And then we meet that theme in this. But then looking at this as an era as a whole, we were like, oh, maybe we'll get more of an explanation as to why it snows when people around her, or like her mother's subplot or the whole Ruby Road sign thing. Nope. Never, not once, ever got an explanation as to why it snows around her. And her ending...
It was the power of the memory, Sam. It was the power of the memory changed the weather.
It was the power of the memory. It was the power of the memory. And her ending, if you want to call it that, like, no goodbye. It turns from this gross, weird thing where we can clearly see from the reshoots that it was meant to be her and the doctor remembering the baby, and the doctor trying to, like, comfort Belinda while also letting Ruby know, like, no, I hear you. Like, we'll talk about this later. But now it just kind of becomes the doctor taunts her and leaves. Like, she doesn't get a goodbye. She doesn't get, like, touched on again. Like, It's just sad. It's, like, wasted potential.
I just feel like for some reason it's written as if RTD got to the final 10 minutes of Empire of Death and then said, I actually hate Ruby Sunday. And it was like, wait, do we? Do you? Yeah. Do you? And she's like, I love you. And he's like, fuck off. And like for some reason, she just doesn't really ever like, I don't know, get her, like she never gets brought back in from that point. Like even at the point that Belinda and the doctor are like, oh, where should we go next? Yeah, Neptune. Yeah, let's do this and that. And also, Ruby, we'll drop you off. We'll drop you off on the way back.
There's no like,
that's right.
When Martha comes back in series 4, she's in the TARDIS and the Doctor and Donna are kind of talking about where they want to go. And Donna's like, you could come with us. And Martha's like, oh, you know, I do love this and I do miss it, but I've got a life at home. And then we still get a whole new episode of like her being caught in another adventure. And then she goes back home by choice. But like, you're completely right that they're just kind of ignoring Ruby in that moment. It just feels completely like uncharacteristic of the Doctor.
Yeah, it felt like there was so much warmth, for example, if you think about Matt Smith's Regeneration, where he finally went and we had Karen Gillan come back down the steps. And even though Jenna Coleman is right there and it's Clara and they've got such a close relationship and they're basically in love with each other, even then, Karen Gillan descends the stairs and it's Raggedy Man goodbye and they hold each other's faces in that memory in that moment. And it's the significance of the first face this face saw. And, you know, Ruby's not the first face that
David Tennant was.
Saw. It was David Tennant. But, you know, like there's some significance to like, you were the first one, like you were the person I took away, you know, us on that rooftop. And there's no moment for that either to say, God, you and me, Ruby Sunday, the times we've had, you know, and also it felt like the whole Joy to the World storyline was centering around like that phone he wasn't picking up. And though he was having these conversations with Anita, there was the one conversation he was avoiding, which was with Ruby. And he continued to avoid that conversation, then he died. So a cautionary tale, question mark?
No, but you're right. Like, I don't know. It's to keep myself from getting too negative. Something I loved companion-wise in this, and it's not. Sorry, Ruby, it's not about you. It's about getting Belinda home as a subplot for the whole series.
Great arc.
This I really loved, and I do think it was a great arc. I think it was very reminiscent of Tom Baker's first series, where you have a continual thread. It's almost a bit Flux-esque where, and this is how I think you do it really well, there are individual stories, individual episodes that like start, middle, end, but they have a little through plot where it doesn't take away from the main episode. You just know the Doctor wants to get Belinda home. That's what they're trying to do. Even with like the Vindicator, it's not a big enough thing that it takes away from the episode. So like I found with Flux, something that I struggled with is how much a quote-unquote normal episode Doctor Who's like War of the Sontarans or Village of the Angels would then turn fluxy and have entire scenes that had nothing to do with the main story. And you didn't have that in this. I think it was really, really fun. I like that you got costumes at the beginning and the end of the episode that kind of carried through. The only caveat with that, sorry Ruby, I do not mean to be blaming you, my darling, is that Lucky Day felt way too disruptive for me to fully enjoy it in a series that's designed to be like one continual adventure.
Yes, I agree. And it was nice to see Ruby be part of that wider unit family. And it's nice that we're getting like a Pertwee-esque unit family be built up around her as well, that she can go to, that she can talk to, that she built that relationship with Kate. That was a nice thing to build, I think. That was nice that there was that interaction between them. And this whole thing about like her collecting mothers was quite funny. But in that episode as well, it was a shame because she was like, I'm really struggling. And then Conrad appears and makes it worse. And in the end, Ruby has to forgive him for that. But I guess shows her strength of character in doing so.
I think Ruby did a very nice thing.
I think Ruby did a very kind thing. But Ruby doesn't really get her resolution to reward that kindness in a way, I think. And she's not extended that kindness by the Doctor who witnessed her do it as well.
Do you know what they could have done to like, if they're going to completely rewrite and reshoot the ending of this episode, so Belinda's a mother, you have the whole subplot where Anita Dobson is both Ruby and Belinda's neighbour, which again doesn't really come to anything except like she's your neighbour, she's my neighbour. It could have been that Belinda is Ruby's neighbour, and in this world where Belinda already has a baby, in the scene where the Doctor comes back in her garden, Ruby's coming by to like visit, or she's like, instead of her mum coming in, it's Ruby saying she'd babysit or something. She's like, Doctor, what are you doing here? You know each other. What's going on? And then you get that kind of goodbye to both of them. That could have been a cute tie to have in.
God, that would have been a way to do it, wouldn't it? If they hadn't already made Belinda's, I mean, because they could have gone back, given the reshoots were in a new house, and done Belinda's original house be on the same block as where Ruby lived.
Because Ruby, like, is in a family of adopting children and fostering children, and like
she could have been on the flat below.
She could have been the flat below or something, and be like, oh, I'm bringing her upstairs. My mum's babysitting her before I've got college or something. Like, and have that be a tie, and then you have a final farewell to the pair of them, and that would have felt a bit more complete.
Yeah. It gets a bit wibbly wobbly at that point, but there's something in that. Keep going. Keep the
gas. We're cooking.
Yeah, there's something in that.
Yeah. To segue slightly to the monsters and villains of the series, I think that this was really fun. I've kind of broken it down into returning monsters and then new monsters. I think if we focus at the minute on the new monsters and villains that you come in, because I think overall for me they're something I really, really loved in this series and in this series as a whole. I think the robots are really camp. I did think their design was like a bit silly at first, but they really grew on me. I really, really like the robots.
Yeah, I like them as well. I like the whole like aesthetic that they were part of, the 60s retro futurism thing. They look cool. I like polish.
Oh, polish.
That felt like Disney budget done right, to like lean on some of that kind of like, what can we do that's a bit droidy, basically, for that. And that was a nice touch. I liked them. I think that I know I liked them. I don't know why I even said I think. I know I liked those because I found their cat emoji face really funny.
Yeah,
I liked that they had that very literal way of thinking.
The cat is irrelevant.
That was funny. That was good.
Yeah, I think they're really good, and I can't stop thinking of like Gadget when I think of polish. Like, I think they're really fun. I really like that. Lux. Fantastic Stella. Like, that episode 100%. For me, I'm not like a huge fan of the Gods plot, but this episode for me is a 10 out of 10. I think in the art, like, this is how you reimagine Doctor Who, a 2D villain that comes out of the screen. We've never seen that before. The artistry behind it was so well done, so much talent behind it. Alan Cummings' voice performance, hilarious, incredible. We get that amazing animated sequence. I think it gets a really interesting end where it wants more light, it gets more light, it becomes one with the universe, it becomes nothing because it's everything. I think, so flawed by Lux. Really, really enjoyed that character.
Yeah, I agree. It was one that I was sure I would hate based on what I knew about what was coming. And then in the end, I think it was quite beautiful. And it's also very memorable. I think it's one that really exemplifies what this era should have all been about, I think, with the Disney budget, is something like, Lux animated brought to life. And being really experimental with the animation styles, and that was really, really great. That felt really fresh, and things that I think could have quite easily felt cringe and probably did to some people. The sort of little love letter to the fans weaved in there, I personally felt was quite lovely. I enjoyed it. It was done, I think, in the best way it could have been done. I liked it a lot.
No, I really, really liked it. In Lucky Day, we had the Shriek. I think for like a villain of the week where like we know they're going to be used that week and then they're not really going to continue before that, like a bit like the Hoiks. I think it was like a good sort of like, quote, standard monster for that kind of episode. I like that you have the differences between the real Shriek and the fake Shriek. I think that you get that scene with Ruby describing what it's like when a Shriek hunts you, and that leads some really interesting cinematography with the lighting and how they like the taste, so they want to get you scared. I think they were really fun.
I agree. The Shriek was good as well because it had to be pitched at something that was kind of like Torchwood / unit level, something you can take down without the Doctor's help, something that's quite easily neutralized, and also something critically for the story that Ruby can handle herself with a taser at the very end.
Yeah.
So I like that it had like a mechanism for hunting and that it had fun with that, but also that ultimately it was just kind of like a nasty dog.
Yeah, exactly. In that episode, however, we got Conrad Clark. For me, so sorry, got love and wishes to you. Boring. I didn't care for him. I didn't like him in that episode. I don't know why they thought he needed to return. Certainly not a 3. In an 8-episode series, did we really think that the villain for 3 of them needed to be Conrad Clark?
Yeah. Well, not only was he the villain for 3 of them, but some very similar types of men were all kind of also the villains for these. So it was Alan in the first episode was kind of evil incel Alan.
Oh, I didn't even mention Alan,
Yeah. I mean, his demise is...
Island.
His demise is quite odd in that he's a hoovered up sperm at the end. I don't know how I feel about that at all. And then, who was the other one? And then Kid, right? Well, Kid is different in that his motivations are different. But ultimately, if you were to actually look at their dialogue alone and swap around the motivations a little bit, they all play quite similar characters and play them quite similar ways. They all follow a kind of a similar template, and I was also sure that's where like Unholy Trinity was going to go somehow, was going to be that all of them got wrapped up together and they became like an unholy trinity of white guys. But
no,
it didn't go that way. I just kind of felt that this is interesting. I had a friend who is otherwise like very woke. I had a woke friend. They recently said, I've been on my Doctor Who train recently. Like, haven't been watching it for years, but for whatever reason, I have been watching this era. I've been watching season 1 and season 2 and been watching them along, and I'd be really interested to know what you think of it. And I was like, well, there is a podcast on that. They weren't interested in that. So I gave my summarized feelings. And I was like, yeah, it's a bit this and it's a bit that. I think this is what's gone wrong a bit at the minute. And they were like, I really want to like it. But some of the like politics of these stories, I feel a bit like Friend Who's Too Woke. They were like, I don't disagree with the points they're making, but they're making the points in such a way that it's almost a little bit embarrassing. Like, even though they're like not things I disagree with, it's the way in which that point is being made. It's so smack you over the head with the point of the week. And I felt that all of those villains served that point. Like I said before, I felt they all kind of served a punching bag for a kind of person that, the writer, the fans, or whoever don't like and wanted to have a go at. And none of them felt like they got a very satisfying end. Conrad is forgiven, Kid goes to jail, and Alan becomes a sperm. So I don't know. I think what happened is Russell saw shows like Loki before he was doing Doctor Who, or as in between doing Doctor Who anyway. And he talks about this, right? He was like saying how like half-assed the representation was of doing a bisexual Loki. And he was like, what a joke, what a joke, what a joke. You throw in some line and you think that counts as representation. Pathetic. So fun when he was on the outside of Disney. and then brought in those writers and was like, have another go, do it with me, and like, do Rogue and do it right. But I also wonder if he then also was given kind of the keys to doing Doctor Who, but doing it on Disney Plus with an international audience, and said, I'm going to say what I want to say, and I'm going to say it proudly, and I'm going to do it on that platform on Disney Plus. And therefore maybe went in harder for some of those points, spelling them out a little more than he would have done elsewhere, because perhaps he felt like elsewhere this gets softened, and maybe he felt like in revisions and then feedback and then more revisions, this will get diluted anyway. Like, it's going to become something else. So if I start from a place that's so strong, it'll become something else in
Intense.
the wash anyway. But I think in the end, maybe the
Yeah.
first draft stayed in. So I think that was what undermined those villains for me.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that like with Kid, interesting design, like it leads to an interesting conversation about the vilification of the Hellions. But the note that I had is that he's not hugely memorable. And I agree with you. Like, I kind of use my mum as a barometer for a very casual Doctor Who fan. Like, she really loved watching when we were young. Really enjoyed, like with so many people, fell off towards the end of Matt Smith. Come back to it now, and she has saying, and again, like I credit Russell for trying to make Doctor Who more inclusive, more quote unquote woke, bringing these conversations to the screen. But she was saying, like, I feel like I'm trying to be like taught a lesson very, very on the nose that I am really receiving, rather than enjoying Monster of the Week, enjoying Story of the Week.
Right.
And I think Doctor Who has always been woke. I think Doctor Who has always taught you lessons.
Yeah.
But I do agree that like the heavy-handedness of it, and I like to think of myself as I'm something of a woke myself.
We're progressive guys. Like, we market this as like, come on our queer journey through time and space. Like, 100%. But I think it's just, and I think as well, this is the other thing. He's done progressive writing in such a strong way. Like, I look again to Years and Years. There was a clip circulating the other day of, oh my God, I was going to call her Anne Hathaway. Who do I mean? Who plays his villain? Nanny McPhee, Emma Thompson. And there's a clip circulating of Emma Thompson's character. Vivian Rook is the big bad. And she's a politician. Like, again, he can do.
Isn't Vivian Rook from series 3 of Doctor Who?
No.
Vivian Rook, I'm pretty confident she's the one who's like, I'm sorry, but Madam First Lady, you're in terrible danger.
No, she is. Oh my God, they used the name twice. That's so funny.
They did. They literally used the name twice.
God, that's so funny. Vivian Rook and Vivian Rook. So very different motivations between the two of them. Vivian Rook, Viv is a businesswoman, entrepreneur, politician who, in Years and Years, is just like a full fascist. And in the end, there's like an interesting nod that she's almost lost control of the narrative that she's pushing. That there is also now another force behind her that's pushing it harder, whether it's a donor or a backer, or whether someone else pulling the strings. She says something about like, they'll kill me if I stop now, they'll kill me. And also an allusion to like whether her voter base are the people who will kill her. Like, they've become so radical that if they felt that she'd betrayed them. Anyway, the point being, that was not that long ago that he wrote something that was as layered and clever and emotional as Years and Years was. And that made lots of really good topical points. And it was done in a really clever way as well, in that the first scene of Years and Years begins with, I don't know how they managed to edit this. I think it's really clever. They took a clip of that day's, or maybe the previous day's, BBC Radio 4 news and put it into the sound so that that's what the character is listening to as he drives in the car. So you know that this story begins today. So as we go through the future and through the years that come, a lot of it is rooted in things that are really going to happen. So it started with like Doris Day has died because it happened the previous day. So we were all kind of watching this episode like, gag, this is now and this is happening. And then as things happen, it really felt like this was your future gone out of control, which made it very frightening. So he clearly can do that so well and so powerfully, which maybe is why I'm also being so harsh in the way that it was done.
Yeah. No, I get it. I mean, this era, a big thing that we wanted in this era is new writers, and we got it, and we got really interesting stories in this. I think you get that kind of diverse, interesting villain in the story in the engine with the Barbara and Abina, where it's a villain where you really see it from their perspective at the end. And I like a villain where by the end they're not even really a villain. I don't necessarily think it's needed. I'm happy to hate them by the end and want them to be a villain, but I like knowing their perspective and getting why they're doing it. I think, like you were saying with Years and Years, you then get that complexity with, by the end of it, seeing Emma Thompson's character and not knowing if she's alluding to her like follower that she's created turning on her. And so I do think you do get that in this era. The last monster that I noted as a new original character is the Bone Beasts. To be honest, I didn't really have much to say on them. They're interesting visuals, but like no reason for them to exist. They're just kind of like there.
Yeah, they were just kind of there.
They're just kind of there. But we did get a lot of returning monsters and villains, which again, I think is something we were asking for at the end of season 1. We had the Toymaker in the specials, and then we had Sutek in the finale of season 1. But we got in this era loads of returning monsters and villains. We got the return of the Silurians at Christmas, and I like that because why not include returning species in minor roles? Like, I'm really here for that. I was hoping that's what we were going to get in the Interstellar Song Contest, but yeah, it's not a Silurian story, but throw a Silurian in. I thought that was really fun.
Yes. Yes, I liked that too. It was nice to like, it's part of the world building that I enjoy, which is returning creatures, returning monsters. I think it's great that in such a short season, they've challenged themselves to introduce a lot of new monsters and villains. And I think that's really great that we're not relying too much on bringing back old stuff. A shame we never got any Daleks for Ncuti, like a real shame.
Yeah.
And I'm sure
that article aged really bad. It's like, if I never see a Dalek, I'll be fuming.
Yeah, and I'm sure that they would have been back for his third season. And that really would have, I think, been a more fitting end, is that he gets one of those big kind of all of my enemies assembled against me Doctor moments, and he gets his biggest victory before his biggest downfall.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think with the villains we got returning, I mean, they're interesting. We'll go through them, but like, I just think every Doctor needs to see the Daleks. Like, the big three is the Daleks, the Cybermen, and the Master, and he didn't see any of them, not a single one. Like even Chris Ferguson, much as he got 3 Dalek stories, he saw a Cyberman head. Like, it was a reference within his era. We did get Valangard coming back as a reference in the Christmas special. I do like that as a continual thread in this era, and that's something that I think fan service pays off well, in that you don't need to have watched The Empty Child to know who Valangard is, because we get reintroduced to them in Boom. They're a weapons factory, they're like weapons manufacturer, the Doctor doesn't like them, and they get this like returning thread throughout the season. I think that was interesting, at least.
I like Villengard as an emerging big bad. I like that we've kind of already seen the Doctor do justice on them via like a little throwaway line in series 1, which is about how there's a banana grove there now. He's like, I like bananas. Bananas are good. So he does get his revenge on Villengard one day. And maybe one day we'll put a face to it. But I think the point of Villengard is that there's not a single figure in that organization that you can point at and say, there's the evil one. They need to be dealt with and the rest will follow. But it's kind of it's a whole broken arms industry in itself that is broken, and that's why it's such a big faceless villain that he deals with. It keeps coming back.
I mean, there's a comic that they've released where the War Doctor's the one who turns the factory into a banana grove.
Oh yeah, good.
Yeah. We get the return of the Midnight Entity, and I think this is the start. It's not even the start. The last season was the start, but this is the real definitiveness, I think, for me, of the issue I have with their returning villains that followed through for a lot of the other ones, where we're told a returning villain comes back, but we're not really reintroduced to them. I think this episode does do a good way of, like, you don't really need to know who they were previously. The Doctor just clearly has met them and is terrified of them. But they come back and they're completely different to anything they've done before. And I would go as far as to say that this is true for every single returning villain in this entire era, going back to the 60th specials, where they come back and they act completely different, they look completely different, and if we weren't told that's who they were, we wouldn't know. And I think that's like a flaw that I have in this character. I kind of wish it wasn't the Midnight Entity, because I think a villain that's behind you that you can't see, but if it goes behind you, it will immediately kill you. I think that in itself is really interesting.
Yeah, it feels like they started with that place where that was a new monster. And then in the writing process, they decided to change it to make it the Midnight Entity, and they tried to kind of put like a new twist on it, like it's evolved, it's changed. I don't feel too strongly about it either way, like whether it's the same monster and it's changed or not. It's kind of quite frightening to think that it's somehow endured hundreds of thousands of years and is kind of unkillable. I think is also quite frightening.
I almost feel like Wild Blue Yonder is a better spiritual sequel to Midnight. Like for me, I think because we had that and I enjoyed that so much, I think that dampened that for me.
Yes. And also like it also could, like this could follow Midnight in this.
It could.
Also this could kind of follow Wild Blue Yonder in a way.
Some people were saying that if you wanted, you could have a trilogy where it ended on Wild Blue Yonder, where you have Midnight, you have The Well, and then you have Wild Blue Yonder, and that's kind of like its final form. I just think if you're going to bring back the Midnight Monster, I think it's really interesting to have done it in a story with David Tennant's face. I think there's something there. I don't know. It's interesting.
I know what you mean.
The other two big characters they brought back in this era were the Rani and Omega. With the Rani, again, it's just a continual critique from mine of this season that it's a waste of potential. So I adore both Anita Dobson and Archie Panjabi. I think that Anita Dobson was fantastic, and I just wish Mrs. Flood hadn't been the Rani, because I think Mrs. Flood, in her own accord, is such an interesting character. Like, to have her as like a sort of villainous River Song-esque character that keeps coming back, I think that would have been amazing, but I don't think she acted at all like the Rani. Archie Punjabi, I felt like was the Rani, but again, we're told that the Rani is this, incredible scientist. She has her own planet, and she's like a chemist. And we didn't really get that. The only thing was that she obviously wanted to try and use Time Lord biology to make a new race of Time Lords. But then she goes into that like she's meant to be cool and calculated, but she just sort of like opens a door to Pandora's box, not knowing what's behind it, and then gets eaten halfway through the episode. And like, it just felt like, again, wasted potential.
Yeah. Yes. I think they pivoted. I think there was a different idea in place for what Mrs. Flood was. And then I think they changed it to be the Rani, either on the request of Ncuti or because they all decided it was a good idea, or because they saw enough fan theories that they were like, yeah, go on, Rani's better than what we did. That'll create more conversation. That'll create more content. And then they pivoted to make it the Rani, and they were like, it'd be so clever. What if it's a bi-generation? What if it's... So I think they changed what Mrs. Flood was.
I just did, dear listener.
But because Mrs. Flood didn't indicate any Rani behavior to me whatsoever. I think breaking the fourth wall doesn't make any sense as the Rani, and why the new Rani didn't do it too. Like, if you were going to continue that theme, have her bi-generate and then address the audience, right? Like, let it keep going with it. But it's obviously not the Rani before the Interstellar Song Contest, and therefore it doesn't make sense. How she was traveling places, like her god powers made more sense if she was kind of just appearing in places because she had those powers. If she's actually been traveling from A to B to C to D, following the Doctor, and then also like getting costumes made.
I know. Like, I mean, we do know the Rani loves a disguise.
She does love a disguise, but she's also been getting like access and building plausible cover stories long enough to. So like the idea that she's kind of like hitching a ride with the Doctor, like even like how exactly she was following the Doctor, I'm not super clear. Like, I guess like with a time ring, but like how she followed him to where he landed. Did she even manage to disguise herself in time? And he never even saw the disguises. Like, who was she disguising herself for?
I guess just for fun.
For us?
I guess just fun. For us, but like, I don't know. It just felt like it was all going towards the double two Ronnies joke, where like she says, so much for the two Ronnies, which was the two Ronnies joke I got, but then I didn't realise that at the end of every episode of the two Ronnies, they'd say, it's a good night from me. That literally was like a double up two Ronnies joke.
In the cinema, I heard it wrong, and I thought she said, it's a good night for me. Like, because the other Rani's gone, there's no competition, and so I was extra confused. I was like, "That was you."
Like, but you're going to regenerate into her.
Yeah,
like, I guess she's dead now. Like, I don't know.
I mean, I also did really deep this recently. I was thinking, like, to actually be eaten is so horrifying. Like,
it's not like Swallow Gulp.
No, exactly. It wasn't like Swallow Gulp dead as soon as she went into him. Like, she was like,
her skull was crushed.
Like crushed, and it's a bit like what am I thinking of? What's the horror film called that I'm thinking of with a giant cowboy hat in the sky that's an alien?
Oh, Don't Look Up.
Don't Look Up. No. That's not right. That's the other one.
That's no. Is it? Oh God, what's it called?
I was going to say Up.
Nope. It's Nope. It's not Up.
It's not Up. Up is very different. Yeah, it kind of gave that. It's a real shame that she was killed off that quick. It was odd, and this kind of I think also leads to I mean, Omega was just kind of there to kind of slither out and eat her, and there was other things that I think I'm not familiar with the classic episodes around him, but that defined Omega before that were not there.
Well, he has no form.
Time.
That's a big thing from Classic Who, is that Omega's lost his form. Like, he's wearing this suit because he doesn't have of it. Like, at one point in the Three Doctors, he takes off his helmet and he doesn't have anything underneath it. Like, he's lost his like physical form. And there's a moment in the story with the Fifth Doctor and Omega where he takes on the Doctor's form. Like, I think he takes off the mask and he looks like Pete Davidson. And I just like, I don't know. With him, I'm almost willing to even overlook it because I'm like, I don't think that's the real Omega. I think it's like a legend that became mythologized and blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Would have been an interesting concept if they hadn't just done that for Suit Tech. Big CGI dog that's become something because he spent so much time in the time vortex.
Yeah.
Big mummy because you've become something spending time in the underverse.
Yeah. And I know we're talking about the monsters, but I think for me, what's also kind of made my view of particularly like the Rani and Omega more negative is It's probably the way that we've dipped into like the world of like myth and legend, which kind of means like anything can happen. It's kind of like, like, oh, he became myth somehow. It's like, sure, why not? And then like the other piece of lore mess has obviously been the bi-generation has really undermined the Rani for me as well. Like bi-generation's rules are so vague and poorly defined. It kind of feels like a joke. And I think at the point you feel like, yeah, like, sure, why not? Anything can happen. Anything's anything. It just becomes a bit pointless. It didn't really work with the 14th Doctor either, but I think we try to find a way to make that cycle make sense. The 14th Doctor will die and then he'll become the new Doctor, and at that moment the old TARDIS will become the new TARDIS, and it's like it's all actually the same really. And then adding in this new part just to make this Omega story work of the infertility line and the cellular explosion being a literal thing, and the massive lore problem that they introduced, which was then like the Doctor can't have children anymore, and actually he hasn't had children even though he's told us before that he has. That wasn't true. And
one thing I didn't realise, because I was in the cinema and Josh told me, he was like, they're going to do looms. And I was like, what the fuck is a loom? And then Louis Legal, friend of the pod, was like, I was scared they were going to do looms. And I was like, what the fuck is a loom? And I looked it up, and there is, I think it was in comics and like expanded media, there's this thing where they say that Time Lords are infertile and they use these machines called looms to like breed a new group of Time Lords. So I don't know, maybe that was where they were going. There is sort of like expanded lore that says about it, but yeah, I won't go too far into the finale because we just spent a whole 2 hours talking about it last week. But I like one thing that I actually wanted to mention last week that I forgot was that it's another case of Church and Ruby Road where we feel tricked as the audience by being like, oh my God, like you missed this, and there's that thing where the Doctor saved a young Belinda from a car crash, and I'm like, I don't remember being told that she was nearly killed in a car crash earlier. Like, did I miss that?
No, it was kind of just like added in as one of the things that happened during the like zip through her timeline.
Okay, sure. I don't know. It's messy boots. It's messy boots. To just ping through a couple highlights for me from this era, and I'd love to hear some highlights from you as well. The Fugitive Doctor's return and the 13th Doctor's returns. I think to get this much love and reverence for Chibnall's era and for Jodie's era was really welcome, because I think a lot of people were worried that he was going to kind of ignore it. I do, like, I'm confident, we spoke about it last week, that the Jodie edition was a last minute addition. However, I'm really glad we got it because it just felt so perfectly done. I have so much reverence for her Doctor. I really, really do love her. And the Fugitive Doctor. And for them both to get like an on-screen appearance in this era felt very special. And I really, really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I agree. I think the 13th return at the very end was nice. I wish she'd been, I think, more able to do a handover earlier with Ncuti, I think, and maybe just go straight into him. But I liked this moment of them getting to interact properly. When else would that have happened? Like, how else could that have made sense? So it's nice that she came back when she did at the very end. The Fugitive Doctor as well, it was right. I think that was the story to include her. And I think the way it was included was quite clever. There being some memory of a past life that I'd forgotten, and that's why I didn't quite recognize you, companion, previous person we've met before. So that was nice too. I agree.
Yeah. I liked that we got lots of little characters dropped in this season that were great. I think Rylan and Graham Norton were great. Yeah. I love, like you said earlier, the fans and Lux. And I also think, I know we mentioned it in the companion section, but Anita was a huge highlight for me this era. I think that all of these little characters that you sort of have fun with in their episode, I think that was really fun.
Yeah, I agree. I think The Well was one that stood out to me as having a really strong supporting cast.
Yes.
I really liked that one. I really liked even in Lux, actually, that there was a little plot line there for, I'm going to forget all the names, sorry everyone, I'm bad with names, but the guy
that played SpongeBob.
The guy running the theatre, right, he even got his own little, like, neat, simple arc there as well about how Lux was manipulating him. Maybe the only one where that was a little weaker, but not bad, was, again, Story in the Engine, where as the story went on, everyone else who was kind of trapped in the barbershop kind of just was stuck going for a lot of it. But broadly, an Interstellar Song Contest as well. I like the two who, again, names gone, were helping the Doctor through the story, the nurse and the engineer who were able to help progress the story. They were great.
Yeah, they were really good. A final highlight for me of this era that it's become bittersweet because of the lost potential, because of the reshoots, is Susan's return. I have been wanting Susan to return for ages. I love Caroline Ford. I love Susan's character. I was really, really glad to see her back. And obviously we saw in Unleashed that she was wearing a different costume. But like we were saying earlier, it's just so clear they were setting up for a third season that wasn't commissioned, or at least hasn't commissioned now and won't be commissioned in the way that they were hoping. And I truly think it's just sad, and like it's almost like offensive to me, and to use, I guess, kind of a strong word, that they have footage of Caroline Ford on the cutting room floor. Like, you bring her back. This character has so much reverence in the fandom, and just with Caroline Ford herself, and you have her in these weird visiony shots with Ncuti's doctor, and then a whole little ending for her that it's gone. It's on the cutting room floor, and I just think that's really sad.
Yeah, I totally agree. The way that this footage just exists somewhere and has been removed, I mean, it really must have been unsalvageable with the new story. And they must have done the maths to say, like, is it better we give Ncuti a proper regeneration on the screen? And then there is a journey into, the next era of the show as and when and if that gets commissioned. Or is it better that we keep this footage? And they did the maths on that, and they decided that that's what it had to be. And I'm sure it was with regret that they did that. But someone said before, like, someone has to have the uncomfortable conversation with RTD to tell him that, like, Caroline Ford is 84 years old. You cannot be moving the story along this slowly. Like, she did a fantastic job in this, she did such a good job in the scene she was in. I really enjoyed seeing her. To not then have her in the finale was such a shame. And I think even in season 1, I had this complaint where they were so clearly setting up Susan, and I talk about my granddaughter in a way I never did before. I talk about my family in a way I never did before. I was so sure that was going to be a part of the final episode, to be honest, was that, like, a big part of the resolution was going to be like, well, Ruby found her family, now it's time for me to find mine. And that was going to be his immediate next mission, was going to be to track down his granddaughter and, confirm, okay, it wasn't Susan Triad. But what I've realized is it really matters to me that, she almost was, or I thought she was, and that affects me more than I thought, and I've got to go and find her. So yeah, really disappointing.
I think if they were commissioned for 3 seasons and they got the 3 seasons the way Russell clearly had planned out in his head, I think there is a really interesting Susan arc here. By the end of season 1, he thinks he's found his granddaughter, but it's not, it was a trap.
Yeah.
By the end of season 2, he's getting visions of his granddaughter, and we know that she's involved somehow, but they haven't met. And then within season 3, they meet and have their proper reunion. I think that's a really interesting arc. However, risky fucking move that has not played off in a big way, and I really, I'm sorry to say it, I really hope that Russell gets told that, like, this was a risky move that really didn't pay off in not writing a 2-season arc for a 2-series commission, where it could have been at the end of season 1 we got this teaser for Susan, and then in season 2 we found her, and that still would have been satisfying. And so I think, there's a world in which the Doctor's in the memory TARDIS having a nap or something, and then has this sort of nightmarish vision of Susan where he wakes up and suddenly you see, Mel is evil but not talking, and then the story progresses in that way. And then as he says goodbye to Millie Gibson and says goodbye to Ruby, it ends with, like, Ruby's found her family, I'm going to find mine. And then that's part of the Get Belinda Home thread, and then they find Susan at the end of the season. So I just think it's poor planning on the production side to not write a 2-season arc for 2 seasons.
Yes, and just a waste of time, frankly, as well. Like, to bring her in, like, you think I need the money? I've got my mortgage. You think they're going to pay my bills?
She's going to plenty of conventions.
She's good. She's fine. She doesn't need to be. She's retired. Leave her alone. But I mean, also, I will say, like, Russell is absorbing so much of the pain of, the complaints. I'm not saying it's just you, it's everyone. Like, everyone's had it in for Russell for this. And also, like, we don't know, what promises Disney made or what conversations were had that gave him the confidence to actually do this. We don't know what other decisions other producers might have made and said, oh, no, actually, we really should do this or do that. And how it lined up with other people's availability and what number of crises happen behind closed doors that caused it to be removed. But yes, massively disappointing. And I do think it would have been an interesting arc to have had them fight each other again. But it sounds like in the leaked ending, even, the deleted ending, that they still wouldn't have quite met, but in a way that could have been it.
But we as the audience
got to see her again and know she's okay. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. I don't know. So to kind of segue towards some of my closing thoughts, I want to talk about the era as a whole and then maybe touch on the future of the series. So it sounds sad because this series has so many amazing solo episodes and I really don't want them to get lost. I wrote down my little list of favourites. I loved Church on Ruby Road, Devil's Cord, 73 Yards, Rogue, Joy to the World, Robot Revolution, Lux, The Well, Story of the Engine, and the Interstellar Song Contest. I think those were some of my personal favourites. But I just think this era suffers from really poor finales and it leads, like, my overall thought is just wasted potential. I think, like, that's what I come with. I think there's wasted potential for Ncuti, wasted potential for the companions, wasted potential for Susan, some wasted potential for the returning villains. And it in a era that has so much money behind it and, like, such fantastic visual effects, I just don't think Doctor Who works on only 8 episodes per season. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
And I think that this era left me with the taste of wasted potential.
Yeah. I think what's difficult, right, is that you used to have room for a flop. I talked about Into the Dalek earlier, and it's followed by Robots of Sherwood. And I really don't like Robots of Sherwood. It's one of those episodes to me that's just so corny and it just doesn't quite work. And it certainly doesn't follow Into the Dalek very well. There's things in it that are fun. There's great character work. Jenna's great. Peter's great. You know, there's still a lot to enjoy about it. But there's not room for like a bad episode anymore. And I think this is what the show I think has been like really bogged down by, is that everyone knows that there's always been this kind of risky, like, ooh, will they not renew? Ooh, what does Disney really think of it? Ooh, like, you know, how many series is shooting? Like, I think there's a lot of fans who don't need to be worrying about these things because it's not your job to worry about them. You're a consumer who can just watch and enjoy and take the bits you like and ignore the bits you don't and just enjoy the back catalogue. That's all a fan really needs to do. You don't need a podcast. You don't need to be swayed by any other fan's opinion.
Do you know what? Actually, this is our last episode of Wholala. Thank you so much.
What are we doing? What are we doing right now?
Are we going to get renewed? Are we going to renew ourselves?
This is my free time. I'm
doing this of an evening.
What the hell are we doing? But what was the point I was making? I think it's been... It's an era that I think has... I think this is it. I think people have put too much pressure then on a story that's been a bit wobbly, and Doctor Who's always had wobbly stories. But I think it's wobbly... people then go, oh, well, that's it. That shows this whole era was a mistake.
And don't throw this away. Yeah.
Right. And I think we've had a lot of fun. A lot has worked. I think you're absolutely right to say that, despite everything I'm saying today being entirely negative. I think I agree with you. Like, so much of it has been good. And I think even in the episodes that I haven't, loved, that might not stand out as a favorite, I think there have, in every story, there's been at least a moment I've liked. And
completely
or several moments, like, and Rogue was one of that at the time. I kind of was like, I don't know, back to it. I
adored Rogue,
and I've come back to it, and it's one of my favorites. And I think the romance was actually one of the least interesting parts of it to me. Like, it's obviously the core of it, but like, there's a lot else about that episode that I think works really well. And I think it's the same stuff as the Interstellar Song Contest, where it gets those kind of like, there's little flashes of light and dark and camp done in a way that's kind of integrated well into the story. Moments like him lip syncing to Can't Get You Out of My Head. And the same with like moments in the Interstellar Song Contest that really work for me, like the confetti cannon and Graham Norton and silly little bits that, are integrated well into the story, are written with a good bit of wit and a bit of a wink that works nicely.
Yeah.
And I think we had a lot of moments like that. But it's funny, a lot of those moments did come from guest writers. And I think that's why it's a shame we didn't get more guest writers, I think, in series 1, where maybe arguably this mattered more.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I don't want to get bogged down. It makes me frustrated that I get so negative at this moment, because I think this era has been such a shining light in so many ways. You're completely right. Like, even in the reality war, which I think is a poor finale, so many moments, like the folding of the coat and other things I can't think of off the top of my head. But there are a lot of moments
the whole
that
first 20
I
minutes
love.
Is fun.
The whole first 20 minutes is really, really fun. And I think that there's just so much to love in I've been a housewife in this era, that I don't want to get too bogged down by the negatives. But I think, like you said, so much that's outside of the fans' control, like the overarching Disney say on whether or not Doctor Who's going to continue. Like, clearly Doctor Who should be able to continue without Disney. I just don't know whether the BBC can afford to make it in the way that it's being made now. I say bring back the old cameras, bring back the wobbly sets, bring back the bobble wrap. Let's start making 80s Doctor Who again and see where that goes.
Let's do cheap
Make
Who.
it experimental. Make it cheap. Make cheap Who. I want that. Like, Doctor Who doesn't work in a streaming format. Like, it doesn't work like that. I want them to go back to making... I actually was talking to my brother about this recently. He was saying, like, if they stopped trying to make Doctor Who like Marvel and they started trying to make Doctor Who like old Doctor Who, I'd probably come back and watch it.
I would love them to do a Billy Piper series where they insist on using only like tape cameras, where they go back and they're like, right, we're doing it like it's the 80s. We're doing synth recordings. We're getting back Dudley Simpson and the gang. We're doing the Radiophonic Workshop. We're doing it old school, and we're making it, you know, if it wobbles, if it's weird,
Proper.
We're proper. That's what it is, and that's fine. No, it's been an interesting ride. The real villain, of course, is Disney, and we all knew that, and people were sounding the alarm bells, and at the time being like, oh no, making a deal with Disney, and it was like, no, it's fine. They've not given up creative control. It's all right. But I mean, look at the pickle.
They're pumping in money.
They're putting in money. You think you'll meet a streamer who gives you lots of money. I really hate to say this. I hate to say this. I really hate to say this on the pod, but I don't feel confident that the Billy Piper era will actually happen. I'll be really, really honest and say it. I hope it does. I will say, to counter my earlier story about someone messaging me who said they didn't like this era, I saw someone at a party on Saturday. We have a mutual interest in Doctor Who. We haven't really talked about it together at all. And I was like, what have you thought of this era? Like, what have you thought of it so far? And they were like, oh, I love it. I think it's amazing. I think it's like the best it's ever been. Like, all of it's for me. All of it's a 10 out of 10. Reality War was so much fun. I had such a great time. I don't understand why everyone's so negative. So, like, there is also a world where, and this came out in the IMDb ratings too, as much as we're going, what went wrong? What went wrong? I think a lot of that has come from the non-renewal and us going like, oh my God, Doctor Who's in the shits. Like, it's partly that. It's partly how we reacted to the final episode and the hurried kind of, you know, late changes. But I think it's also the uncertainty that hangs over it right now that's making us worry about it. Because this person was rattling off and they were just going like, oh my God, and the Billy Piper series, I hope they do this and I hope they do that and I hope they do this and I hope they do that. And I love Billy Piper. No. And I was like, this is wonderful, because in my head, I'm just like, I'll level with you, darling. We'd all like a lot of things that aren't going to happen, which is unfair. But I didn't say that. I kept that to myself and said, yeah, me too, thinking like, I don't know if we're ever going to get this series that you speak of. It would be great if we do. Future of the series, I really don't want them to do. I really don't want them to do, because I think it will damage the brand. A mini-series where she's not really the Doctor. And the reason I say that, again, I come back to a casual fan.
4-part mini-series filmed in London should be wrapped up a drain pipe.
Listen, will it be good? Yeah. Will I enjoy it? Absolutely. But in terms of like the longevity of the show, I think this is starting to cheapen Regeneration. I think it's important people know who the Doctor is. Like, I think people need to know culturally who the Doctor is right now. And if it's this kind of like, oh, is David Tennant back? Well, he is, but only for a bit, but not really.
Do you know what it's giving? It's giving like 2022 onwards, who's the Prime Minister? Can you tell us? There's been so many recently.
Exactly.
It's lost all meaning.
Who's following it anymore? Exactly that. I think you need time for that Doctor to build their own brand as well, and people to know the show.
Yeah, I feel like... As a fan, I love David Tennant, I love Billy Piper. And if you'd have told me, and none of this is confirmed, but people are saying she'll get like one special, because I agree with you. I don't think we're going to get the Billy Piper years. I don't think that's going to happen. I think this is a favour to a friend. And I think at most we'll get a special. And there's a world in which it'll be a David Tennant and Billy Piper special where she meets 14 and we get kind of the 10th Doctor Rose reunion everyone's been gagging for. And as a fan, would I love that? Yes, I would. I love those two characters. But I agree with I think it'll be so damaging the brand, because I know so many people who love David Tennant as the Doctor and love those eras, but are saying like, it would make me want to stop watching the show if he came back, because they feel like it's the BBC's cash cow to bring back David Tennant whenever there's something going wrong. I don't think the BBC or Bad Wolf know what the future of the show is. Does it need a break? Should it go back to the BBC? I think Bad Wolf care so much about the show and want to make it well. And I hope the show stays with them because I think they can make good Doctor Who. I think that there are issues with the storytelling as a whole and the narrative as a whole, and a big issue with just like it being commissioned. Like I just don't know from a business side of it, can it afford to be made the way it is without Disney? I don't know. I think what we do know is we're getting the war between the land and the sea. I'm very excited for that. And what interests me is it feels so tonally different from that teaser trailer that we got to anything that's been in this era before. Feels very ITV, feels very detective-y. I'm really curious to see what they're doing with the redesign of the Sea Devils. I just think it's so funny. If you look at this era as a whole, we've had returning villains like the Toy Maker, Sutek, the Midnight Monster, the Rani, Omega, and the Sea Devils. Like what? Like, and there's no Daleks anywhere.
No,
like,
I know. They're saving them. But they better be good when they turn up. I'll say that. But yes, if they turn up again. But yes, I remember this in the cinema. We got that little preview for War Between the Land and the Sea, which was so poorly placed because all of us were still reeling from the regeneration that I don't think anyone really took it in, and I don't know if anyone's really gone back and bothered to take it in since. Like I've not actually really seen any conversation about the War Between, apart from like the War Between might be a series of several shows actually, and it's like yeah maybe, but I think beyond that, I don't think anyone's really talked about like the contents of the show. Or like, oh, Russell Tovey, let's get like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like it's got lost in the discourse, and I think they should have actually held on to it for a couple of weeks and released it now. But anyway, it looks great. Like it was whiplash in the theatre to see like the unit we'd just seen and like Kate at her massive steering wheel, like angling
I think
the
we're all
shard
your
at
children.
Bone Beast. Yeah, we're all your children. Here we are in this like hyper techie unit tower. And then suddenly we had her in this like, much more grounded space, which looked a bit more like, you know, like a real government building. And I was like, this is kind of how it should have always looked. And I'm not saying that's Unit HQ, but
yeah, I think it's filmed in, I think it's called, isn't it the Temple of Peace in Wales, the Temple of Tranquility or something? Like it's the place where they filmed Platform 1 and the National Gallery and the Sarah Jane Adventures, and it's the Silurian base. It's like that returning set all the time. That's where they filmed that. But what that reminded me of is very like in Black Panther Wakanda Forever, where the Wakandans have to answer to the governments of other people. And I feel like one of the critiques we've had for UNIT as a whole, which we sort of touched on this episode, is that they kind of have become this great big entity of do whatever you want, and I like the idea of like grounding UNIT a bit more. I think that would do it really well, so I'm excited, and we know we're getting that likely next year. We don't know the release date yet, so I'm interested. But like you said about withholding the trailer, we now have this trailer for a show that will probably come out next year so that they pace their Doctor Who content, and to have a trailer for a new show in May that isn't coming out until potentially next year, like it feels like a risky way of being like, see, we do have stuff down the line. It's all part of the plan. This was the plan.
It's all coming. It's all good.
It's all coming. Yeah. So I don't know. Currently where I'm at with the show, I'm excited for the future. I'm apprehensive about the future logistically. But I am glad, because one thing that really frustrates me, I think I'll kind of close my thoughts on this, is I keep seeing this era of like, people online being like, Russell should have never come back. If we could, I'd skip right back to Power of the Doctor. We should never have Russell. And what Russell and Bad Wolf and this era of Doctor Who and Ncuti Gatwa and David Tennant, what they've all given us are countless more stories of Doctor Who. Lots of fun, lots of new monsters, lots of new adventures, great foundations for companions, great interesting characters. I think a reintroduction or an introduction to so many people for actors like Anita Dobson and Archie Punjabi and Millie Gibson and Varada Sethu and Ncuti Gatwa, reintroducing him from what most people know him playing Eric. Like I watched a clip of Sex Education recently with Eric, and like I don't recognize that as the Doctor. Like I don't see that as the same person. And I think that I'm really, really grateful for this era giving us a lot of fun Doctor Who. Yeah. And whatever happens will happen. It's not in our control. I'm apprehensive and cautiously optimistic. I don't know, but I hope the show comes back. That's all I can say.
Yes, me too. I hope it does too. Well, when we had that article confirmation about like the BBC is going to carry on without them one way or another, it's just been very quiet since. Maybe they're gearing up for a big announcement and they're just trying to get kind of everything lined up first before they go any further with announcing things. And they're just trying to, maybe it's going to take them a few weeks or a few months to really think about what that looks like. And then we'll get, some kind of reveal. But we'll see. We'll see. I think with time, a lot of these stories, as you've said, in season 2 and season 1, they will age well, and I think people will recognize a lot of it to be really, really good. And I think particularly they will applaud the variety of it.
Yeah.
And I think as well, like visually, a lot of it's really fun, really exciting. And I think a lot of it will just become fun stories, like you said, like, you know, Rogan, Lux and others. There are definitely standouts, some memorable standouts from this era.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think people say the worst era of Doctor Who is always the one you're currently watching.
Right,
and so
it is.
Like, you know, this era will grow and the reference for it will increase. And I'm excited to see where the show goes. If it goes anywhere.
If it goes anywhere. And if not,
listen,
the fan community stands strong and we'll be fine.
Listen, we can tell you this for free on Wholala. We have plans to be talking about a whole series of 12 episodes for a 13th Doctor Yaz series and a whole series of 12 episodes for a 9th Doctor Rose series that we have this year. We've got them this year.
Yes.
So
I completely forgot we were reviewing Big Finish this year. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah, teaser. I don't think we told them that either. So we got plans, kids.
Well done for staying to the end. You just got a little surprise.
There you go. Well, talk about staying to the end. We have made it to the end of our recap for season 2. Any closing thoughts, Alasdair?
Any closing thoughts? I will say moments of chaos for Doctor Who provide astonishing memes, and I can't lie, I do quite like the speculation. I do find all of it interesting. I'm really sad Ncuti's gone. I'm mourning with the rest of you. It came too soon. I understand why you're feeling depressed, and I'm depressed as well. But I do believe good things are to come.
Yeah, I think they'll come. I think they will. Well, thank you, lovely listener, for making it to the end of this episode of Wholala. And the end, it's funny, no one's counting but us, the end of season 6 of Wholala.
Yes, I wasn't even counting that. I'm surprised to me. I'm like, oh, that's wonderful.
It's wonderful. Well, we are going to be taking a short break next week. We won't be having any new episodes of Wholala next week. You're in your new wilderness years. But don't worry, that will end at the end of June with our Pride Month Spectacular. And we are putting a call out for you, lovely listeners. Please send us your voice notes. You can send us DMs on all of our social media platforms. We're at HolalaPod everywhere. Or email us, probably the easiest way. It's holalapod@gmail.com. A voice note telling us what Pride and Doctor Who means for you. Tell us your favourite queer characters, queer storylines, a moment in the show where you may have had your sexual awakening. We want to hear from you, so send them our way and we may well play it in the next episode.
Yes, please do let us know. We do love a voice note, so do chuck one of those in as well. You can be on the pod with us. And then if you enjoyed today's episode, do rate us 5 stars wherever you're listening. It does really help the podcast. You can also hit the follow button to get notified when we do drop our next episode with you in it. You can donate to our coffee, ko-fi, and buy us a coffee on there. Or you can share the podcast with a friend.
Yes, thank you so much. And we will see you in season 7 of Wholala.
See you there.
Goodbye.
Bye.